Ready? All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Administrative Services Budget Meeting. We're ready to get started. But before we get started, well, actually, we're getting started. Starting it will be Jen with an overview.
Good morning, everybody. On your desks in front of you, there should be a little overview sheet that provides some details on this year's budget. Very quickly, the tax levy is equal to the allowable levy per New York State tax cap calculations. The levy increase in the current tentative budget is $1.846 million, and it is just below the allowable increase. Property valuations increased approximately 16%. Net effect of the levy and valuation increase is an 89-cent decrease in the tax rate currently to $6.91 per thousand. And the way that translates, 1 cent change in the tax rate is equal to $104,272 worth of a change in the tax levy. Okay? Huh? It was last year's. Yep. Structurally balanced budget means no use of general fund balance for recurring events. There is a use of designated fund balance for the helicopter debt that's been on the books for some time. Just over $6 million of general fund balance will be used for capital projects and unusual non-recurring events in 2024. General fund balance is projected to be approximately 13.6% of general fund revenues. 2024 continues significant investment in capital projects. Sales tax revenue is based on recent trends. FTEs and governmental funds have increased 3.94 between the Law Department, HR, and Board of Elections. Base pay includes percentage increases for managers and all of the applicable increases for the union contracts, including the recently negotiated contracts as well. Budget also includes an estimated increase in health insurance and retirement. The final retirement rates were published after the tentative budget was prepared. So we're reviewing those rates right now. We're going to make changes if necessary, and the health insurance rates increased 1.3%, also reflected in your budget. This year we did account for a vacancy savings. There are very few departments, there are some departments that have so little staff that they were sort of an exception to this rule, but we estimated a 5% vacancy savings. The basis of that is between 20 and 21, we realized an actual savings of 7% on staff expenses. 2022's actual was at 10%, and 2023 is currently trending at that 10% as well. We did not assume any decreases in revenues on account of those vacancies, so we figured that a 5% wash would pretty much equal out between the 10% on the staff side and any revenue changes that there would have been as well. Inside your binders, you have your tentative budget is posted on the internet. You use this section for the following information that is not displayed in other sections of your binder. You have your operating budget, and this section includes the local share summary that allows all activity for all funds, displays tax levy, property valuation, and tax rate. Your capital budget section includes the status of active capital projects and a list of projects proposed for new or additional funding in 2024. The fiscal status section includes fund balance and debt schedules. And then your budget summaries and line item detail, which is behind the tentative budget section, is an order by organization number. And really quickly, if you look at your budget review schedule that was also left on your desk for you, to the left of each department, there's a number. That number represents the tab number for that respective department. Okay. The budget summary components, there's a local share summary, your FTE or full-time equivalent position summary. You have your summary by organization at the classification level, and this summarizes the individual departments that follow. There may be comments pertaining to the entire organization. It just varies by summary. Summary by department at the classification level with comments is included in the detail. Budget hearings will focus on those exhibits. Your budget worksheet by account is behind the budget summary. The revenues for all departments within the organization, followed by expenses for all departments within that organization as well. The reports do not show local share by department, so you would refer back to your budget summary. There is a rolling 12-month actual expenditure for July 2022 through June 23 versus the 23 adopted and 24 tentative budgets. Expenditures only, no revenues are shown on this particular report, and it compares expenditures in the past 12 months to the 2023 adopted budget and the 2024 tentative. Financial projections for 24 to 28 are provided in your binder in the sleeve on the inside cover. Annual projection of appropriations, revenue, tax levy, tax cap, tax rate, and fund balance are included on there. Recommended format for these hearings, a lot of you are very familiar with this, but we will let the department head ideally lead in walking us through their summary. You can refer to the budget by account detail as necessary, and it's recommended that the committee vote on any suggested amendments that you wish to send to the Audit and Control Committee, either throughout the hearing or at the end of the day today. Okay? It's further recommended that to the extent possible, the committee propose amendments to offset any increases to appropriations or decreases in revenue. As a reminder, the tentative budget the tentative budget is just below the tax cap. And additionally, after the tentative budget was prepared, a couple of corrections were identified and new information also became available. So I will identify these items as we proceed through the hearing so that you can consider these amendments. Okay? Any questions? Good.
Any questions? We just heard? Good. All right. Leading off with the non-base percentage of 641. John.
Good morning.
Don't encourage.
Yeah, my name's John D'Angelo, head of the Information Services Department. So I will walk us through the summary pages, as Jen said. Happy to answer questions, concerns as we walk through. So overall, across all four departments, and we'll step into each one individually, we see a 16.9% increase, which is about $230,000 across all four departments. So we'll break that down as we walk through this. We'll start with staffing. We don't anticipate any new hires next year, so the number of bodies will stay the same as it has this year and into next. So
John, how many positions do you currently have open?
none,
Zero. Good.
I was able to hire 2 individuals in the past year to 18 months that have worked out amazingly. 2 great people, local individuals that are working out great. They're great fits. I did have to hire them at a little bit of a higher pay rate because the entry-level rate just wasn't doing it for them. So I did offer them a little bit of an increase at the initial rate to get them here. We didn't have a huge pool of applicants. I think there were 3 or 4 people on the civil service list that I had to work from. But frankly, we were lucky to get the 2 we have now.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Really, the only change, you'll see a 0.2 increase in my FTEs, and that's just because the sheriff's department that was paying for 20% of a database administrator feels like they don't need that resource any longer. So it's getting absorbed by my department. So if we jump over 2 sheets to office services. So office services is basically all the postal mail throughout the county and the courier and some contract processing. That's what the office service is. It's a staff of 3. We see just it's fairly flat compared to the overall budget. A little bit of an increase in .1s and .8s, just through contractual reasons for the new CSEA 6300 contract. And then a little bit of an increase for software maintenance and fuel in the contractual part. But overall, staying relatively flat. We don't see a big increase or decrease. Postage is the big number for this department. So we don't see a major increase or decrease in postage moving into next year. If there's no questions on office services, I'll move on to communications. So this is all of our desk phones, of which there are about 1,500 that we manage, along with not only county entities, but we also support the IDA, CRIC, which is up at 2 Academy Street, and the courts system, the courts here and the family court system also. So those are billed out monthly to them. As anticipated, over the past probably 5 years since we've upgraded our phone system, we've seen a gradual decrease in expenses. The way this works is we take all the expenses for communications during the month, and we charge back all the departments and those other entities per line. So it's basically whatever comes in or whatever goes out comes in through that revenue source. Again, no planned major changes to our communications, but we do anticipate a little bit of a drop in expenses there. Next page is our larger department of IT. So that is basically everything IT related, computers, cell phones, printers, copiers, all of that stuff. So we see a increase of 69,666 in .1s and a increase of 34,000 in .8s. Again, those are due primarily to the contractual increases that we foresee next year, and an increase in retirement expenses for the .8s. That's what makes up the bulk of those increases. I do have, in my .1s, I am budgeting for a promotion for one of the people I hired last year that is doing great. We want to move her up from an admin aide to a trainee position in the IT world. So that gets her along her career path, moving up through the ranks. Outside of that, we do see some increases in our .4s. Those are primarily around software and hardware maintenance. So we have a ton of applications that we take care of. Most of them deal with the security of our network, which is part and parcel to what we do, and critical to the operations of the county across all departments. Really, these serve all departments. So on the budget worksheet report, I did break them down by budget transactions. So our major expenses are in the 4120 account and the 4370 and the 4371. Those are our software maintenance and hardware maintenance accounts. So we do see, I would call it significant increases in those areas to maintain and implement what we have to keep our network secure. So if there's any questions on those,
Is that every year
yeah, these will be every year.
going up like this?
Well, will they go up like this every year? Probably not. One of the big changes, if you look at our budget amount, I think it's the 4120 account from last year to this year. We budgeted 6570 last year and 95,000 this year. That's a big change. The big part of that was a mistake. It was a missed expense from last year. We had some funds left over, so we were able to pay it out of 2022 funds. But I wanted to make sure I budgeted it in 2024. So it was the Cisco Security Suite, which is our web filtering and domain name service security. So that's a $62,000 number that frankly and honestly was missed in the budget for '23. So I want to make sure that'll be there moving forward. Will these increase? Typically, I would say we see software increases between 5 and 7% annually, just on the way things go. So none of these big ones will drop off. I am applying for a grant. It's a federal grant for cybersecurity that could alleviate one or two of these devices and combine them. I won't know that until towards the end of the year, though, if I get that grant. And that would only impact, it might be able to reduce our expenses next year, but probably not the years moving forward. Make sense?
I have a question.
Yep.
Okay. So just along, I mean, obviously, to kind of tag along with Mr. Scudder's question.
Mm-hmm.
30 years ago, we didn't have the expenses we have today in this department, because quite frankly, it's been growing.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is a pretty decent increase,
Mhm.
especially in that. And do you see the you know, the more and more electronic that we get, probably the more and more your department is going to continue to grow?
I would say that's accurate. Every single department in the past 5 years has implemented some new business process that we are intimately engaged in.
Yeah.
There are things like two-factor authentication. That wasn't a thing 5 years ago. It was, but it wasn't required. Now it's required. You know, we have to have it. That's an expense. We have a more remote workforce that we need to secure their connection from their home or wherever they're working into our network. So there's additional expenses there. Those didn't really exist, 5, 7 years ago. So we're moving more and more to the cloud for some solutions. So we see that as a trend in the future. While the cloud is a great thing, it can be a little more expensive. So yeah, I don't think your reliance or our reliance on IT is going to decrease anytime soon. We've maintained a stable and consistent staff over the years. As some people have retired, we've tried to replace them with more technical roles because those are the people that are really solving the problems, doing the work. So we're making sure that the department has the technical expertise we need from a manpower standpoint, but some of these things that need to be implemented, yeah, they weren't around 5, 7 years ago. And what's coming next? Probably more and more of the cloud-based security requirements that we'll need to have applications living in the cloud, but users down here making sure that everything's secured. So,
Have you seen, your department's fairly new and it's growing, like you
Mhm.
discussed. Do you see a lot of revenues help from the state or federal government? Like, for instance, you did discuss the grant, the federal
Yeah.
grant available. Are they aware that, the IT expenses for all the municipalities is continually to grow and that they could use the support?
I'm sure they're aware. We haven't seen an increase in that type of support. We do get some revenue back from social services from the way they get reimbursed. So we do charge them some of our expenses. So if that grows, yeah, we have the opportunity for more revenue through that. But frankly, we haven't seen a lot of help from the state. It's been a little bit of the opposite. More, hey, you're on your own. For example, they used to supply us with a state connection to their applications at all of our locations. We just opened up Lucas Avenue, and they didn't do that. They're like, you have to connect to our network yourselves. So, I think they're under fiscal pressure just as we are to keep things.
They're growing just as much, probably.
They are. And a lot of our activities rely on those state applications, so especially in social services. So yeah, I wish I could say that we're getting a ton of support from New York State, but I'm not seeing it yet. Always looking for those avenues, though, certainly.
So we have a contract with the state, right? Something that you
Well, I mean, I wouldn't call it a contract. I mean, we have a relationship with the state. They,
No, I thought we, a few months ago, that there was some kind of increase in security that actually was that we were paying for, that the.
yeah, the state is funding our endpoint protection, basically our antivirus.
Yeah,
So we implemented a new, more robust antivirus solution, which, by the way, is working great. So yes, that is a great example of where the state is coming through. It's a 3-year funding window. So in 2 years, you'll see that when I'm at this table. You'll see that increase, because that'll bounce back to the county's responsibility. But yeah, that is one example where the state did come through and help out, at least for a few years.
Yeah, I remember that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Parker. That was,
sure.
appreciate it. Any other questions? The last department is our GIS department. That stays pretty stable throughout the years. We do have a major project starting now with the GIS. It's kind of a back-end project. We're upgrading, I guess, the back-end database and the structure that supports our parcel viewer. So the tax map department and our department is heavily involved in that project. So we'll use some of those consulting dollars that are budgeted this year and into next for that project. But yeah, outside of that, the GIS department has stayed pretty stable over the past number of years. We haven't had any increase in those expenses, so. And it's a great, I get stopped all the time out and about, getting some real positive feedback on our GIS system, which is great to hear. And they tell me when it's down also. So it is used quite a bit by our real estate and developers, so it's great. Mhm. Any other questions?
Good.
Okay,
Thank you, John.
thank you. If anything does come up, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, have a great week.
We'll give you a triple for this morning. Not a home.
I'll take it.
Stand up triple.
If I reduced, it would be over.
One quick question.
Yeah.
You said you found the 63,000. Where were you over?
Under, you mean
Under-
last year?
Yeah.
We pulled it from some communications, so that's why I feel comfortable dropping communications a little bit, because we
Okay.
had that money left over last year,
Okay.
so that's where.
Thank
Good answer.
All right, have a good day, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry we had to put you guys over there. There were no more. That's good to see.
They didn't want to just put us on the screen.
All right, next up, finance.
Okay.
I know, really. Gotcha. I'm like, I have 2 pages here. Right, I got that, but I was like, what?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Something you don't want, right? Or you're okay with it.
Good morning.
Good morning. Kitty Crow, Director of Finance, and I'm here with,
Kim Moline, Director of Real Property Tax.
all right, and we are tab 21 in your binder. So if you're ready, I'll go ahead and get started.
We're ready.
You're ready, okay. This department, finance department, includes, the main Department of Finance, real property tax, and our insurance administrative office. Our overall local share increase is $759,000, a little greater than usual, but we'll get into the reasons for that. Which mainly is described on the next page. As we've been sharing with you over the past year and moving into 2024, we are restructuring many of the fiscal positions to move into the Department of Finance, as some of those have already started this year. So the increase of 7 positions are really transfers from other departments. There is 1 new position, but we are also eliminating 1 other position in the tax department due to the change in the foreclosure process after the Supreme Court ruling. So overall, there is a 6 FTE increase in finance, but those are offset by decreases in other departments for the transfer of those fiscal positions.
Do you mind telling us what those positions are?
Sure. Where do I have that list? So there are, let me see if it's on this next page. Trying to think where I had them listed somewhere and I meant to bring it. So there are 2 from DPF, then some from mental hygiene, and not mental hygiene, social services. I'll get you the list in a minute. I do
Okay,
have it.
yeah,
It's over there somewhere.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
I had it written down. As I knew that would be a question. I thought it was in my notes right in here. Oh, I see, down on the bottom. On the FTE page on the bottom. So there were transfers from DPF. So, for example, Sam Zafuto, who has moved from fiscal supervisor in DPF. He's under finance now, supporting social services and public health. Also, a senior account clerk in DPF was refilled recently. That was under DPF, which is now under finance. Social services, so Sam's new position there is backfilling a fiscal supervisor. Then Blake's position, which was under Health and Human Services, was Val List previously. And in public health, we have a principal account clerk for the retirement of Joanne Toffel, as well as 1 account clerk and 1 senior account clerk. Somebody from social services transferred over into real property tax, so her backfill position is being filled under finance. I think that should add up to the 6.
Okay. So Sam is actually moving from DPF to a completely other department, or he's also in charge of working on social services? And
So Sam moved to finance.
right.
And
with the
is
new
part of
plan.
the fiscal reorg. He's in finance but supporting social services and public health. So he's assigned those 2 departments to help them with their fiscal needs. Once we complete all of the transfers in 2024, all the other fiscal people that are supporting social services and health now will also transfer under finance. But right now, as we have vacancies, we're just posting the position under finance and filling it under finance, so we don't have to go through the transfer process, which is a bit involved. So that's how we've been handling recent vacancies.
Okay, so some of the changes, like say Sam, he's not working for DPF anymore, or with.
He's not reporting to DPF right now, but during this transition process, we're still trying to hire his backfill.
Okay, yeah.
So his backfill in DPF is also going to be posted to be filled under finance, but it's not filled yet. So he has kind of had a heavy load through the budget process, continuing to support DPF, and also coming up to speed with social services and public health budget. So he's doing triple duty, really.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the FTEs? So we'll go through these and this little closer, and Kim will chime in where things pertain to her area, and if you have questions on property tax items. So So just going through Department of Finance 1310, that's where our main, treasury operations, payroll, purchasing. As you can see, really all the change in dollars there are due to our FTE changes. We had little change in our contractual costs. Under revenue, our departmental income, that is the share of occupancy tax that is allocated to the finance department for collection and enforcement, decreased a little bit. Some of the changes related to the change in the local law as to how the distribution of occupancy tax impacted finance a little bit. So that's ours was the amount that the share that comes to us for administration was reduced slightly, due to that mix. And then under miscellaneous, we have seen a slight increase in our credit card rebates. I think, that was one of the impacts that I was hoping for in consolidating our purchasing unit, is really trying to maximize when we can use a credit card for our purchases, because we do get rebates, and we have seen a little bit. I mean, $5,000, it's every little bit helps, but we have seen an uptick in our rebates. Yep.
Legislator, Shagnon is not here.
Uh-huh.
How many vacancies do you have? I'll ask in his absence back at the FTE.
Good question.
Let me get my laptop, because I do have a list.
I'm not sure if you'll make it back in time, so I wanted to ask that question. Or I'm gonna look at it now.
Great catch, Dan.
This is where I missed Jay Gould.
We've got-
How many hours you're working?
We got Dan now, it's okay.
Well, so Pierre's got that question.
Kitty was hoping we didn't ask.
No, I'm sorry I didn't think of it ahead of time, because I specifically I kind of surprised myself recently, because I did send out a memo to my staff about all of the recent changes to our department. I generally work pretty small department, but since really the beginning of the year, and this also relates to some of the fiscal reorg that we're dealing with. As far as an appointments and transfers, since the beginning of the year, I've had 11. Those were all positions that needed to be filled within finance, but they generally came from other departments. We had 5 actual new hires, so new employees to the county. And I still have 6 refills in process that we are recruiting for. I mean, just, my experience currently has been, it's taking, there's a huge backlog in HR, in part due to maybe the delay, through I just feel like we're just still in this post-COVID backlog of exams. I think they're almost caught up with exams, but we're seeing, just in my experience, fewer people on the civil service list that take the exam, so we have a smaller pool of people to choose from. The people on those lists are also taking exams because they're looking for jobs in school districts or BOCES. They're not all interested in coming to the county, so we get a lot of declinations. I've had people decline an interview because, they're making $6 an hour more elsewhere. That's like, several, like, that's over $20,000 difference in pay for the same title. So it's been a real challenge. I've never experienced a challenge like this in my tenure with the county. Generally, positions in the finance department are sought after. It doesn't take long to fill them, especially transfers from other departments. As an example, and so HR, I know, is just kind of, they have this backlog as well. I mean, all of this is, kind of funneling through their department. Just Sam's refill at DPF, he transferred over, I think it was July 31st. I sent the initial refill request to HR. It just got posted last week. I still have to get applicants in, interview, schedule a start date. So,
Were they just backlogged and didn't get it out, or?
no, I mean, they, like I said, like they, as all departments are struggling with this, I mean, in meeting with all departments through our budget reviews as we do, there's a worker shortage that, we hear about in the news. It's a reality for the county workforce as well. Departments are, we are trying to hire positions, and like I said, there's a shortage of applicants. Or the pay's not competitive, they don't wanna work in Mayville, that's another, or they, and all those things. And then there's a shorter list of people on the civil service list. Well, okay, then we exhaust that list, and then we're advertising for provisional appointment. People don't wanna take the risk of a provisional appointment, cause that means they have to take the test at some date in the future and still be reachable on that list. So it's just, and so that drags out the work in HR as well, not just me. So because then HR has to advertise a provisional appointment, they have to review more applications to make sure that they meet the requirements. And so it's just this compounded issue, and they're working as hard as they can, just like anyone else. So it's not like but it's just created a bottleneck because of all these other circumstances that are just keep piling up. And then they obviously, you all know, I'm sure, that Ken Westfall recently retired, and so that's a lot of historical knowledge out the door, and that happens, retirements happen, but it doesn't make it any easier for HR right now. So, so you asked. Right now, we're recruiting for 6 positions, so if you know anyone, a lot of them right now are provisional, so we've exhausted the list, so.
So you have 5 new hires you've already hired?
5
6
people that
you're
have
looking
come
for.
into the county as new employees to the county.
Okay, and then 6
And then currently, we have 6 vacancies for fiscal positions. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, so moving on then to Department 1330, which is the Real Property Tax Office. I'll let Kim walk through this if. All right, so.
You wanna explain it and then I'll
Okay.
answer questions?
All right, so, so you'll see the reductions in the .1s and 8s. That's due to the one position that we have reduced. We had a legal aid position that helps with foreclosures, but because that process is on hold, it's, pending, whatever new laws the state comes up with for foreclosure. So we just felt it was responsible not to include that position in the budget because we don't anticipate, going through the foreclosure process next year. Should something change, the state comes out with, new procedures or regulations, and, we will come back to you at that time. But it's hard to believe they're gonna sort that all out before end of next year. Then the other bigger change in the contractual is related to software upgrades in our real property tax system, which would allow online payments. I know that's it is an increase, but we do have a lot of people that do pay right now over the phone by credit card. This would allow them to do their transactions online. We have more and more people that would like to do that. It makes the payment more timely. It helps people, make progress payments or partial payments. Additionally, that, I anticipate that would reduce, obviously, if they're doing more online payments, that would reduce the amount of foot traffic and even phone calls, because people could go online, see how much they owe, make their payment. I sit right outside the property tax office where the 2 people who handle all the calls and the walk-in traffic, so I hear all day long, you know, the number of calls that they get and see how many people are coming into the office, and a lot of times the phone calls are just like, you know, how much do I owe? So, having the ability for them to look that information up online and pay online, I think will help us to keep our staffing, at this lower level, even if the foreclosure does, come back into play. If we can reduce the amount of phone calls and foot traffic, then we can reassign, you know, people into foreclosure, so.
That amount also includes, there's two phases. The first phase is going to be our end with delinquent taxes, and then the second phase will be to show it to all the tax collectors who use our
That's right,
system.
too, yeah.
So that way, they'll be able to accept online payments also, which will benefit all the tax collectors in the villages, schools, and towns that use our system. And maybe get the rest of the municipalities that aren't on our system to hop on board.
Is most of them on board?
Most of them are. There's like 4 or 5 towns that aren't. All of the villages are on our system, and there's a few schools that are not on our system. And Southwestern is one of them, and their big thing is that they have an online payment with their software, so they don't want to jump ship because their school district people love the fact that they can just go online and click and pay their payment. So I think it'll be beneficial all around.
How about the cities?
The city of Jamestown doesn't use our system. They have their own, and so does the city of Dunkirk. But the schools use ours.
Both schools.
Well, the ECSD portion of Dunkirk school, so the Sheridan and Dunkirk, they start out with our system, and then it goes to Dunkirk until August, because they collect weird.
Thank you.
Well, they have a collecting agency, like a bank sometimes collects for them?
Yep.
I mean, is that?
That's because they don't want to have in-person payments like at the school. A lot of schools do that. But this could even
help mitigate that a little
potentially
more?
eliminate that from them too, because if they can offer online payments, then they can just pay from home.
Do you see that going that way? Like,
I do.
Yeah.
I think we should. I've heard, we get complaints all the time in the office. Why can't we pay this online? Why can't we pay this online? Our software doesn't allow it, you know? And I think that for the future, it would be beneficial. And especially if something happens with foreclosures, if people will be able to pay differently and they can just click online, see what they owe, pay, and choose what they want to pay, I think it'll be beneficial. Just depends on what we don't know what the future's gonna hold foreclosure-wise.
And that's included in the contractual 04 under expenditures, is that right?
Yes.
And so do you anticipate that it's gonna continue, because it's like 100 and,
Those are just initial fees. Next year,
Oh.
that wouldn't be there because we would have done it. It's just to create the module in our system
It's the implementation.
and to get it going.
Is it gonna adjust John D'Angelo's budget a little more? He's gotta cover?
I don't think it'll impact
No.
IT's budget, because the software expense is already in the real property tax office.
I can see an increase next year already from John. More monitoring, more security.
It's
servers.
already, our online stuff for the tax office is already being monitored, so it shouldn't make any difference. The only security stuff will be through the bank, and we'll have to talk with the bank and get that information to get that rolling.
Do you expect the fees to go up? User fees for credit card payments and things, obviously, so I mean.
It could. Right now, in our office, we charge a 2.5% fee to use a credit card. I'm not sure if that will change. Right now, we're just trying to see if we can even run with it before we get all the, but yeah, there will definitely be a fee to pay online. It'll be
Okay.
probably like a credit card fee.
Okay.
Which we do charge already, so anybody calling and paying with their card over the phone or coming in the office and paying
They're
with a
already aware
card,
of
they're
that.
already paying
Already
those
paying it.
fees, so,
Okay.
That fee's what, you said 2.5%?
Mm-hmm.
It should be higher, I think. It's like 3%.
It's what the. I
well, we
think that's-
generally, we don't charge a fee to make a profit, so we generally charge the fee to cover our costs.
administrative, yeah.
I mean, I know, we are under law allowed to charge a fee, but,
Can you
I mean,
make
we
money?
don't pay fees when we use our credit card anywhere, when we're buying stuff at the grocery store or, any other shopping we do. At some point, I think, it might be just a cost of doing business because, I mean, think of it too, I mean, we're getting our money faster when people are paying, so, it's not a significant, right now, it's just covering our costs,
I'm just
so.
programmed in sales, so.
I know.
Do most
But-
towns, excuse me, do most towns, are they able to pay by credit card?
A lot of the towns accept credit card payments, yes, and they charge, their fees sometimes are higher than ours, so it depends on the tax collector. A lot of the old school tax collectors don't allow credit card
Right,
payments, but
right.
most of the newer ones coming in are like, yeah, let's do it, it helps out, so.
So it's changing then? yeah.
It's changing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And charging credit card fees is okay across the board. If you're in business, you can do a charge for credit cards. The difference here is in business, you can increase your margin to cover a credit card expense. We're basically flat in the business. We're not making a profit.
Yeah, but.
So
Yeah, I
just
understand. what-
charging
That's a good point.
the percentage is just to keep us even.
Yeah.
We
It's to
can't,
serve
we
our
can't say, hey,
residents
let's
better.
add 6% to everybody's property tax, and then we won't charge for a credit card. Well, you can't do that. You can do that in business, but you can't do that.
Correct.
That's not the
Yeah.
purpose of government.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to cover.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
yeah, definitely. It's just,
Understand that, Mr. Herman?
would having the cash coming in quicker offset the cost of charging fees as well, because we're talking about a lot of cash coming in, and, if we get it 15 days sooner than we would have, or a month sooner, then there's a value to that as well.
I think the online is gonna be a big advantage, because if people are behind in their taxes or whatever, I think it's easier to sit in your kitchen and figure out what you're gonna
Absolutely,
do.
yeah.
If
Right.
you have to make a phone call or go in person, there's just a pride thing there. I think it's easier to figure out what you're gonna do in your house, rather than speaking to someone
Yeah.
else
Yeah,
about
and
it. 'Cause
you
already
see
know where you're
that,
at.
you see that when they walk in and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm here to pay, and you can tell.
Yeah, it's almost a shameful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's like, we're good, just pay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, we understand.
Yeah, so, and it's where everything's going.
It is, yeah.
I love not talking to people.
Or vice versa?
They love it too.
Let's take a 15-minute break here. No, I'm just kidding. So I go not talk to people.
Bob, it doesn't sound like you. I've been to the hardware store lots of times. You don't get out of there in like
So what do we
10
got next
minutes.
here?
It's like an hour.
Good point.
I've used up all my words, okay?
All right, so, and then the revenue under the real property tax department is our transaction fees. All right, moving on to 1989, which is the insurance office. So that is our office that Dennis Brooks and Aki Wakamatsu, they cover our workers' comp municipal plan and our casualty and liability program. So all of their expenses are offset by what is essentially billed to the liability plan and the workers' comp plans. So their net local share is zero, but overall, their expense increase was $2,700. Okay. So those were the main three finance departments that, cover all of our, generally our offices that have staff. If you'd like me to go on to start out with Department 99, I might recommend, rather than doing the fund balances and insurance, if we did some of the other accounts, which, Kim has a role in, well, we could do those, and then after the break, go through the fund balances and insurances,
Sure.
if you like.
That's a great idea.
Okay. All right, so that would be tab 99, the last one in your binder, or should be the last one. All right, so I'm not really gonna go over the first page there, because Department 99 miscellaneous is miscellaneous, so I think the more relevant change in local share is by item, so kind of go on to the FTE page. The FTEs that are here, so under 1330 roll, so those are the allocations to Department 1330 for tax rolls, maintenance and process that we do for other municipalities. So some of the tax bills that we do for, like, say, the schools, that's charged back. And then the countywide employee expense, that is the CSEA president. So the cost of the CSEA president is absorbed by the county, and we last year in the 2023 budget, we moved that expense under miscellaneous because it really isn't attributable to any one department. Okay, so under Department 1310-9999, a lot of revenues in this department. The first one there is sales tax under non-property tax items. We did, for the 2020, as a reminder, for the 2023 budget, we used a 6.5% increase year over year in the sales tax budget. For 2024, the percent increase was 6.26%, and this figure comes from the comptroller's exhibit, where they determine the lesser of 2% or inflation in determining what the allowable tax cap increase is. And so the inflationary factor in that exhibit is 6.26%. So that's where we align the sales tax budget increase with for 2024. We do see what I see. I'm sure you hear in the news that inflation is persisting. It's not anticipated to really significantly drop. I guess the question could be is if people, kind of slow down their spending. We haven't seen that yet, but I don't have a magic ball, but I just communicating our methodology and putting together the sales tax budget for 2024. We will get our next sales tax payment, should come in Friday of this week, so I'll update you on where that stands. But so far this year, we've been tracking right at budget, just maybe slightly over a couple $100,000. So we've had healthy returns this year, fortunately. But I haven't had any indication that we anticipate a significant surplus like we've seen in the last 2 years. I know we've been fairly conservative in our sales tax budget the past couple of years, and we've been fortunate to see a surplus. I never would have projected that at the time we put those budgets together, but just grateful it didn't go in the other direction. And again, so this year right now we're trending to be about just a couple $100,000 over our current budget. So I'll give you an update again on Friday once we get our next payment. We are seeing a trend up in included in that classification are OTB revenues. That's trending up a little bit. It could be due to the additional, I think they changed the laws in terms of sports betting, so that may be attributing to this uptick in the OTB revenue. The next classification, so this is the $400,000 increase is what is essentially the increase in interest and penalties, because as I already mentioned, in terms of our FTEs, we are not anticipating a tax sale next year. So this actually is somewhat of a positive to us in our budget because we are not budgeting to have that recording of a loss on the sale at the auction. So we won't have that, negative impact for recording the losses, but we still will continue to receive interest and penalties even as, people are making late payments, or even if they, do come in and pay their taxes in full, they'll still have, if they're late, they still will have interest and penalties. So those will continue as they do every year. So that does result in an increase in our revenue, so to speak, a net positive impact.
Is that 400,000, so is that just interest and penalties? The 400,000?
It's kind of reflective of taking out the loss. Because, so in the 2023 budget, we would have included a loss, and then our interest and penalty revenue, well, we're taking out the credit for the loss, so it makes the revenue go up.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, the reality of the transactions, but it should, but I would also, say, once we see how things settle with the state in terms of foreclosure, I mean, I don't anticipate, our loss could be greater than it has been because we know that we're not going to be able to keep anything above what is owed. Due to the change, to the Supreme Court ruling. So we will never see anything more than what is owed aside from interest and penalties, and may even see less if we have a net loss always.
But we're not anticipating an auction in 2024, so this would be an impact beyond 2024.
Yes, yeah. So.
And Kitty, you're projected for 2023 of $3.2 million. What does that include beyond interest and penalties?
Well, we did have our auction this year, and so I think this is, if I remember correctly, so this is what has been booked to date from that sale. We not including any surplus from the auction that was put in escrow for anything that we received above taxes owed.
Okay, so any surplus is still in escrow and it's not reflected in that?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Because they could go back at least
Yes.
2 years, from our auctions and request money, so.
Yep.
That was my next question. Thank you.
Okay, departmental income, that is our indirect cost allocations that are billed out to the enterprise funds for county services such as, payroll, purchasing, other administrative costs. Interest in earnings, so I will note here that this is an item that was missed in the budget, so this is interest earnings on our regular bank accounts, not our investment portfolio, so that was, unfortunately, it was to the good that I missed something. So we have, I would recommend to the committee that we amend the budget to increase this line item. We did have other amendments yesterday at Human Services Committee, namely the Medicaid amount was finalized. We received notification from the state after the tentative budget was prepared. So, we put a list of amendments together that would help offset that increase in the Medicaid expense increase. And this is one of those items. So as we get to the end of the week, we'll have that full list for the Audit and Control Committee to review.
So what would you recommend the Administrative Services Committee do to pass a motion to reflect the change to the budget? How much?
I would recommend that they make a motion to increase the interest in earnings by $125,000.
Even though your projection for 2023 is $287,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, project, in 2022, our interest earnings were 146,000. Rates are up this year, so I suppose it could be reasonable to, project a further an increase over 120,000.
I agree with you, rates are up. We have high expectations for your ability to manage our investments and earnings.
I mean, if the increase, if you wanted to, propose like 250,000, I don't think that would be unreasonable based on our current projections. And again, these are like, more like short-term, earnings just on our shorter term, like just the money that we have in our regular bank accounts, our liquid accounts, not any even short-term like CDs or anything like that. So it's just interest and earnings on cash balances. So yes, at yesterday's hearing, it's up to the committee if you want to make the amendment now or just keep a note, and we'll kind of go through any amendments of the day at the end of the meeting.
Why don't we just do it right now?
Okay.
Because we're focused on it rather than
Sure.
backtracking. So we need someone to make a motion to amend the budget. Well, we're gonna go 250.
Yeah.
He just needs to speak it.
I'll make that motion to amend the budget by $250,000. And then I'm gonna stop talking because I lost my voice.
Oh, no.
I hate it when that happens.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. The next category down under miscellaneous, so you'll see in 2022, we recorded $902,000. That was from the opioid settlement funds that we received. In 2023, we budgeted those settlement revenues to offset our MAP program in the jail. We did the same in 2024, so you don't see them budgeted under this department. Under New York State aid, I'll highlight going back to 2022. In 2022, we received one-time retroactive payment associated with the settlement of the tribal compact. So that one-time payment went back several years. It was over $3 million, I believe. And so that's, not a recurring revenue at that magnitude, but the 2023 and 2024 budgets both include the expected annual tribal compact revenue of $750,000. The reduction, though, overall under state aid is due to the NRG pilot, the subsidy from the state to offset the reduction in the NRG pilot ended in 2023, so we no longer receive a subsidy for that loss.
And how much was that last payment, do you remember?
Well, I probably closer to the 290,000 variance there. I have that. I'll look it up on the break, but it kind of reduced over time. Like every year it was a little bit less, so I don't remember the exact amount.
Okay,
But
no, thank you.
Kitty, do you think that there's any risk in the tribal compact revenue for 2024, given the disagreement between the state and the Seneca Nation?
to be honest, I don't have an update on that, but I'll further research that. I'll reach out to NISAC to see what they might recommend, where they stand on that.
Thank you.
Under interfund transfers, just as a reminder, back in 2020, after 2022, we had made a change to under the financial management policy to not transfer, any proceeds from out-of-county waste from the landfill to the general fund, mainly due to the bonds that were issued in 2019, so they now have an additional debt service payment for that, the cell that they built out in 2019. Okay, moving on to 1330, other tax rolls, maintenance and process. So this is where, as I mentioned already, we have some staff time that is allocated here to account for the processing of tax bills to other municipalities, and then those fees that are charged. So unless there's any questions, we'll move on. Under tax assessment, this is where we budget for any potential legal fees that are associated with challenges to assessments. We haven't had much expense there this year, but that can fluctuate year to year, so we do usually keep a nominal amount in the budget because we know we do get some. Moving on to 1362, which is tax advertising and expense. Even though we won't have an auction next year, we'll still have to perform, searches and we'll incur legal fees on any foreclosed properties. And those fees are passed on. So looking back on 2022, we did have some unusual write-offs, so that revenue was less than expected in that year.
Kitty, a process question. So since we will not have an auction, will we still proceed with foreclosures?
We will not be able to foreclose.
Right.
We can still search, so that way the search is done for whenever we can, but there will be no foreclosure, possibly, depending on if anything gets signed anytime soon.
So we will have search costs and legal fees, but we will not proceed with foreclosure. I just wanted to clarify the note in the reason for the change.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, so I should just say
On properties to be foreclosed.
Correct.
Thank you. I thought so.
Okay, the next account, 1430 countywide employee expense. Again, that is the salary and benefits for the CSEA president, which we're required to cover under the CSEA contract. Pilots, so pilot payments are expected to go up about $72,000. That schedule is usually provided to us from the IDA. So it's a positive there. Municipal sales tax, so this is the amount, based on what we're projecting for sales tax, this would be the amount that we would, that would be collected, and then we receive the money from the state and it gets passed on to the municipality. So that's just, we have to record that as an expense and a revenue. Under the contingent account, we, as Jennifer mentioned in her opening remarks, we did include, in 2023, we did have vacancy savings were included under the contingent account rather than to all county departments, and we changed that for 2024 and applied a vacancy savings throughout all the county departments. We have had a department head meeting to review with department heads what's expected of them in terms of how to, they are expected to adhere to their overall budget, and we recognize that some departments may have more or less vacancy savings, but overall, we will need to manage that across all county departments. So if some department has more than was planned for vacancy savings and another has less, we will we will need to make those adjustments. Department heads were also kind of put on notice that their budget's gonna be a lot tighter than in the past with less flexibility to move things from, say, point ones to point fours if they want to have or experiencing other cost increases. They're just gonna need to more closely monitor their budget, which Jennifer will help them with throughout the year. But that expectation was set with department heads already.
So Kitty, in the 2023 budget, we included a contingent account of $230,000 for vacancy savings.
Mm-hmm.
What is the total for 2024 that we've spread across all the departments?
I think in total, including the fringe costs, was about 3.7 million.
So we've included a significant reduction in salary and benefit costs in the 2024 budget based upon our expectation of vacancy savings.
Yes, and I know that sounds like a big dollar amount, which it does to me. But I do feel that in our current environment, in terms of the delays that we're seeing in hiring, if it was normal turnover, in the past, maybe we've had, turnover, 3% a year. Our just looking the last year and where we're trending at this year to about 10% less than what we've budgeted in base pay. We don't see a dramatic change or catch up, so to speak, and the time it takes to fill positions and for all the reasons I already described earlier. We did feel that it was reasonable to expect that will continue. And rather than cutting positions, which we know we need, we just want to realize that we know we probably won't fill those positions for 100% of the year. Right now, this year, we're trending again to be at about 10% less.
Thank you for that explanation, which you and I have discussed.
Yeah.
I would frame it additionally in the respect that in 2023, we had a budget surplus because our vacancy savings far exceeded our contingent amount. And we don't expect that to happen in 2024, to have that budget surplus, because we feel that our vacancy savings are a truer reflection of what we expect to happen in 2024.
Yeah, I would agree with those comments.
Thank you.
And so how does that reflect in say a department, right? So they have a vacancy that's not being filled, so they're not spending money. What does that account for? How is that?
So in each department budget, we utilize an account under the 0.1 line items, and it's called contingency savings. So we applied a negative amount in that line item. So if we can get into the detail. So we calculated what 5% of what their base pay was for all the positions that they budgeted. Right. We calculated what 5% of that number is and put it as a negative amount in the payroll contingent account. And then a corresponding credit for the FICA and Medicare that we wouldn't realize either.
And then if all of a sudden everyone starts applying for jobs.
Correct, yeah, so what we anticipate, let's just say, finance takes us until next July to get all of our positions filled, and we have more than what we expected in vacancy savings, but another department is able to hire their positions that they budgeted on schedule. We'll probably have to make adjustments between the two departments so that the net overall budget is balanced. So that's how we plan to manage it. Additionally, what we've told department heads is as long as they're not exceeding what they planned for in their base pay for the positions that they budgeted, we will help them find a way to offset it if they don't realize the vacancy savings that were applied to their budget.
I have a comment on that too, is, you know, over the last few years, the departments have done a good job of covering overages within their own department, and their go-to has been this that we're
Vacancy,
talking
yeah.
about. And they say, well, we haven't filled these positions, so we've been able to cover. So now, moving forward in this year, they aren't gonna have that little savings account. So how do we expect to cover those?
Well, again, we did
Coverages.
just last week, because we have a monthly department head meeting. You know, Jennifer prepared, you know, some bullet points to communicate to departments just that. You're not gonna be able to rely on vacancy savings, so you're really gonna have to hold the line on the rest of your budget, because, you know, countywide, you know, we still need to come in at our budget. You know, if in a perfect world, all of a sudden, you know, everyone's flooding the doors to get a county job, you know, and we had to come back to you to say, look, you know, all the way across the county, everyone's filling all of their positions, you know, that should be a good thing. And we might have to figure something out and make reductions elsewhere, you know, or consider other options, but I don't anticipate that. But again, department heads have been put on notice that they really need to pay closer attention to their budgets this year.
Yeah, the account actually is, and it's listed with every department. It's 1999.0000 payroll contingency / vacancy savings. So through every department, if you're open to finance right now, you could look, and that's where the account is listed, and it will be listed for every department, and that is based off of the calculations that you know, Kitty set forth.
Just to continue the comment, I agree that it is more accurate and correct the way we are doing it, and assuming that, you know, we're initially taking that little slush fund form and cents in the department that they've been able to utilize. So I think it does make it a little, they have to stay within their budget a little better. And it's pretty simple to say that today here, but we were all experienced and been here long enough to know that we are gonna have some budget transfers this year. And hopefully that they can still find it within their department
Yeah.
through some other savings, but as long as that's been alliterated to the department heads
Yeah.
to do so, and that their slush fund in essence is kind of disappearing, because
Yeah,
most of the transfers have been utilizing that overage for them, so.
yeah.
I'm sure they were happy to hear that.
We didn't get as many complaints as I expected, but. I mean, you know, conversely, we didn't go, you know, in some years, you know, through the review process, we might go back to a couple of departments and say, hey, we need you to, you know, find $250,000 or find, you know, $50,000 if it's a smaller department. So we didn't do that. We applied the vacancy savings, and so, you know, that.
Left them full at that point.
Yeah, so, and I feel too, you know, that we haven't done this broad of an approach before, but I do think it kind of provides a more equitable adjustment to all the county departments, and not just kind of some of the bigger departments that we tend to, you know, say social services or sheriff, you know, because they have bigger budgets, you know, find this or cut positions. So that was our strategy for 2024, was to try and do a more broad Okay, community college tuition, I planned, the methodology used here was similar to going from 22 to 23, 2% over the 2023 budget. However, you can see we are trending ahead of this year's budget. So, you know, sometimes that's a little bit difficult to project, you know, enrollment and such, but that was the rationale for the 2024 budget was a 2% increase over the 2023 budget. Under fire service loans and grants, so those are just the repayments of the loans that are issued out to the various fire departments as they apply. Under debt service, that is, includes the principal and interest on the county's outstanding bonds. We do have a couple of dedicated revenues toward those, toward that debt service. So under mortgage tax, that revenue is dedicated to offset county debt. There is a decrease there. For a few years, we have seen an uptick in mortgage tax receipts. So as you can see in 2022, we did realize $2,025,000 in revenue. And we had increased the budget from 22 to 23 to $2 million. However, we are trending behind that amount right now. So I did lower the budget for next year. They do seem to be leveling off, and we did have a nice uptick, and as you know, that I think has impacted our valuations nicely, but it does seem to be, leveling off. Additionally, under departmental income, our one of the bonds that we issued was, really to help JCC fund one of their dorms that they built several years back. So they actually make that debt service payment, but we have to record it as a revenue. And then under New York State aid, we do continue to get a subsidy on the bonds that were issued for the capital project for the court project back in like 2006 when they added the entrance to this building. Next account, transfer to capital. This is where you'll see the transfer to the H fund for capital projects that are included in the 2024 budget. We did majority of, we had about $750,000, I think, that were funded by interest earnings that are dedicated to capital projects. The balance of our capital projects, you'll see in the local share spreadsheet, are funded with fund balance. And a little bit from reserve for capital, you'll see on the local share spreadsheet.
So Kitty, why are you projecting a substantial increase in 2023 and a reduction in the 2024 budget?
For which?
Use of money and property.
The interest earnings, the interest earnings projection was based on, I have to look up my spreadsheet at the break, but I do have a model that I use for projecting the interest. That's the interest earnings on our long-term portfolio. We are seeing a surplus this year. I don't expect it to continue at that level, but we could revisit that. I can look up what our most recent earnings are from the time we put the tentative budget together.
Okay, if you could let us know.
Okay.
Again, we have high expectations for you.
Well, we've pulled a lot of money out of there because the rates decreased so much, now they are on the rise, so it's hard to.
Yeah, we did change our, we changed our methodology for what interest earnings, oh, I know why. I know why this is lower. Now that I was talking about that, the light bulb went off. So I believe what we put in as our financial management policy that we would use the prior year's actual interest payments as the basis for the next year budget. So I believe that's why the 762,000, but in 2022, I can explain why that looks like a negative 2.4 billion, if that's what you're looking at now. So the 762,000 should be the amount of actual interest payments that we received. It doesn't take into consideration the change in market value or anything. 2022 was the first year that we, at the end of 2022 was the last year that we were booking the change in market value. And 2023 was the first year we were using budgeting based on the prior year's actual interest payments.
I understand that, and I wasn't questioning that. I was questioning why you're projecting 2023 at 1.1 million and 24 at 762.
So because this year we are seeing our actual interest payments are up. So for example, if we end the year at 1.1 million this year, our 2025 budget would show that we would be using 1.1 million as interest earnings to offset capital projects in the 2025 budget. Because the policy was to use the actual payments from the prior full year.
Yes, okay. To fund capital projects.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So, but I'll verify those figures that's.
Okay.
Under 9901, so these are the transfers to the D and the DM fund. So you'll see these transfers in the local share spreadsheet. It's essentially the portion of local share from the property tax levy that's transferred over to balance the D and the DM funds. Because when we collect property tax, we don't receipt it into the D and the DM funds. We receipt it in the general fund, and that share of the property tax is applied into the D and DM funds through the interfund transfers. Okay, that is miscellaneous.
Let's take a break.
Sure. Thanks,
Any
Kim.
questions? No questions? So we'll go till 10:45.
Okay, thank you. Sounds good.
It's a 16-minute break.
Okay.
Muldowney to the chambers, please.
You just love to have that microphone. It's so funny when Michael and Steve, do you know Steve O'Brien? You know, Kevin, you know Steve O'Brien.
Oh, I know, yeah, I know who he is, yeah.
Michael and Steve were doing announcements for the kids' hockey games, you know. When Will was playing hockey and Jack was playing hockey, and it was like that. Right.
I did a football game one time.
But I mean, they actually, I think, they were having too much fun.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of fun. And then I did the, remember the cow poop bingo they did that year for a fundraiser? And the cow's name is Rosie.
Of course.
And Jim Coon's wife's name. All right. Shall we? You ready, Kitty? All right, welcome back. And we will continue on with number 43.
No.
Where are we at?
A review of fund balances, I think, is on the schedule
Oh, yes, yeah, okay,
after.
sorry.
Although I'm happy to do the workers' comp and liability first. It's up to you.
If you're prepared for one, whatever you want to do.
Okay. So I think if we just want to do the fund balances, that's fine. So, but I would like to start with just looking over the under the operating tab, so it'd be the very beginning of your binder, just for an overview of the use of fund balance in the tentative budget before we get to the projected fund balance, you know, this is in the projections. So it's just the first page after the operating tab. So the local share summary, you know, shows, this is just the breakdown of all the appropriations, revenues, and then, you know, the property tax is calculated in the last column there. You can see basically the formula going across the top there, you know, column A, B, C, D, et cetera, and then the plus or minuses that make up, you know, the formula to calculate the tax levy. So the column E, which is the appropriated fund balances and reserves, I just wanted to, you know, take time to review what fund balances were used and for what purposes. So the first line there, the 2.3 million, that is the amount of fund balance utilized to fund various capital projects. So, and the DPF committee will be reviewing those capital projects during their hearing, but we are proposing the use of $2.3 million for capital projects. In general, the use of fund balance was used for items that are considered to be one-time items and not recurring expenditures for operations. You know, a balanced budget would call for using recurring revenues to fund recurring operations. So the fund balance used in the 2024 budget were all deemed to be for more one-time items. So again, 2.3 million for capital projects. The next use of fund balance was to fund, and this should say actually CSEA, and this is a typo on my part, and the CCSEA one-time bonuses that are included in the 2024 budget. As you may recall from the contracts that were adopted earlier this year, they did include some one-time bonus payments. The next item is $1,575,000. Of that, $1 million is the $1 million that the county executive mentioned in his presentation for a lake fund. I think they'll probably talk more about that under the Planning and Economic Development Committee hearing. but that was intended to utilize $1 million out of fund balance for that purpose. And that would be any unspent money at the end of 2024. The intention would be that that would remain as a designation of fund balance going forward, so that any unspent funds would be used in subsequent years for that purpose as an assignment of fund balance. So rather than create a formal reserve, under OCS rules, which could be more restrictive, the expectation is to any unspent amount would be designated on our financial statements for that purpose.
Can I comment on that
Uh-huh.
statement? It's all well and good if everyone agrees at this current time frame and under that notion.
Yes.
But in 3 years from now, if there's different individuals in office, they'll say, well, we don't want to do that. So what is, if that is the intent to keep that fund active, is it more reasonable to set up that reserve? The other thing, we're hopefully don't have anything left over.
Yeah, and it also could be that, if, as the funds are used, will there continue to be some type of replenishment, so there's always a minimum amount that's available for that purpose. I don't want to speak for the county executive in terms of his vision for these funds, but, considering that, we do have a healthy fund balance, there are needs for all the lakes in the county, he wanted to provide for a pool of funds to be used for the lakes outside of what is covered under the occupancy tax, because there are some restrictions to things that can be covered under the occupancy tax for in-lake maintenance. But again, having a formal reserve can provide more. I know there's pluses and minuses to showing it as a designation or a formal reserve, so that would be the prerogative of the legislature and how they would want to pursue that. That doesn't necessarily need to be something that is finalized at the 2024 budget. It could be settled before the year-end 2024, whether we want to put the balance into a designation or a formal reserve.
So the amount is not, it's 1,500,000?
Of that $1.5 million, $1 million of that is for the lake.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
The additional $575,000 is associated with the 53rd Medicaid payment that we will have to make in 2024. 2024 happens to be a year that we have 53 Tuesdays, and our Medicaid payment is due every Tuesday. So it just so happens that creates a budget increase for 2024. So we proposed the use of fund balance for that additional payment, seeing as it's not a recurring payment. It only happens every so many years. The designation of helicopter debt service. So when we sold some helicopters that we owned a few years back, we designated the proceeds from the sale of those helicopters to pay down the remaining debt on the helicopters, and so that's what this represents. I think we have maybe 1 or 2 years left of that debt service. We utilize $190,000 in the reserve for capital. We don't have that much in the reserve for capital. I think after this, maybe we left about $500,000. I'll reconfirm that figure, but we did utilize a little bit of the reserve for capital to help fund capital projects. And just speaking of capital projects, in Exhibit E of the budget, for the capital projects that are proposed, that'll show you in the various columns what funds are used to fund those capital projects, whether it's general fund, state aid, reserve for capital, et cetera. So you can see how all capital projects are funded in that exhibit. And then D fund balance.
I just want to ask.
Go ahead.
about the, general fund. So with the unappropriated fund balance once the budget, the county exec's budget is passed, what would the unappropriated fund balance be?
So that's what I'm gonna go through next, in the projections, I have an exhibit for that. So I just wanted to kind of go through first what's
Sure.
included to be used. And then, again, we use $500,000 of D fund balance. D fund balance, or D and DM fund balance can only be used within those funds. Once they have a surplus, they can only be used for road, bridge and highway maintenance. So we're just returning the $500,000 that was a surplus from a prior year. As you know, road and bridge maintenance is sometimes weather dependent, so we may appropriate and have an expectation to do so much work, but it may not all be completed due to, weather events. So it is an appropriate use of returning those funds as we go forward. We didn't really have much DM fund balance, so we did not utilize any there. All right, so so that is a review of what we've used of fund balance. We do have also further toward, almost further in this section, you'll find Schedule 1. Somewhere here. No, I'm sorry. I take that back. It's under the tab called Fiscal Status, which is after Personnel Services. You'll get to Fiscal Status. So this just lists by fund, what our ending fund balance was for the year ending 2022, what we are estimated to be at the end of 2023, and then any uses of fund balance in the various funds. So some of the enterprise funds, that's more of a profit and loss, so to speak, presentation. So I'm not going to get into so much detail here unless you have any questions. I was going to next go on to what was in the sleeve of your binders of our 5-year projections, which includes a more detailed review of the general fund balance and the projected fund balance through 2028. Sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to take a couple. There's a lot to digest in the 5-year projections, but what this shows you is, the first page in just kind of gives some of the highlights of where, appropriations trend out through 2028, revenue, property tax levy, cap, and our unobligated fund balance as a percentage of general fund revenues. So as you can see on the bottom of that summary sheet, by 2028, we're projecting that our general fund balance will still be in the range of 5 to 15% at 12.5%. For 2024, based on after the use of fund balance in the 2024 budget, we're projecting to be at approximately 13.6% of general fund revenues. Moving on, the next page there just shows, lists out all of the assumptions for the various expense and revenue categories used in this model. So there's lots of other assumptions anyone can use, but this just shows you the assumptions that were used. So I'm going to move on from there. So based on those assumptions, appropriations and all the different categories are projected out to 2028. then the next page shows all the revenues projected out to 2028. I will note on the revenues, so the first line item there, property taxes. So in this model, as an assumption, it just assumes that the property taxes increased to the amount allowed under the property tax cap. And then the next page, you'll see under that operating surplus or deficit, there's a surplus/deficit after the use of fund balance or reserves. So in the out years, this figure represents the gap, any gap that we might have. For example, in 2025, that negative $2.7 million, based on all the assumptions used in this model, reflects that we might have a gap of $2.7 million to make up in the 2025 budget. So that would be our work for 2025. If everything came to fruition that's included in this model, which are a lot of assumptions. So after that, the next page then is the projection of general fund balance. So in this exhibit, you'll see, so the beginning line there is just, all fund balance. And then you'll see the list of non-spendable or restricted or items. For example, our occupancy tax reserves, any prepaid expenses, inventory. Then further down, you'll see where we have assigned for subsequent years' budgets. So that's where the amount of any fund balance is assigned for the prior year. Now, this is a little tricky to explain, but for example, you'll see at the end in the 2023 column, it shows 5.4 million being used to fund balance. It's because it's at the end of the year we record that use of fund balance for the next year's budget. So you won't see the 6.1 million in the 2024 column because that gets assigned at the end of 2023. So by the end of 2023, we're projecting 13.3% of general fund balance as a percentage of revenue. With respect to the total general fund revenues that are used for that calculation, which is the row above, just as a reminder, that's A fund revenue only, doesn't include D or DM funds. Additionally, the 287 or the 278 million in the 2024 column includes property tax as one of our revenues. So it includes property tax in that calculation of general fund balance as a percentage of revenue. So the model does not include the use of fund balance aside from the helicopter debt in the out years or any use of other reserves. So if we were to use, here's a good example, like the bonuses in the labor contracts, if we were to consider using that fund balance to fund those in the future, we could plug that into the model and it would, show where we would be, over the years. I did project that out, assumed at what point if we were to project the use of fund balance for in the tune of $1 million a year for the next 3 years after 2024, we would still be within our range. I think we come down to about 11% or something like that. So I think, that being said, it just kind of gives you some perspective that we do have the ability, in my view, to stay within, comfortably within our range as we go forward, even with some of the risks that we know of in the 2024 budget or beyond. I know that's a lot to digest. This model is takes a lot of time to update, so I'm happy to try and answer any of your questions, and if I can't right off the bat, I will get back to you.
So what you're saying is that, in your opinion, you're comfortable that we have a 10 or 11% fund balance? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so if we were to utilize more fund balance in the next couple of years, or if we, like sales tax, getting back to sales tax, I explained earlier what our projection was in the 2024 budget for sales tax. Let's say the economy does slow down and maybe inflation persists, but people, pull back on spending and we don't realize our sales tax budget, well, that would be a deficit next year. If we didn't have any other surpluses to offset it, that would be a reduction in fund balance. Additionally, like I mentioned too, if we decided in the future to fund other items like the contract bonuses with fund balance rather than raising taxes for it, we would still be able to maintain our fund balances in a healthy range.
Thank you.
Would a sports complex payment for JCC be like a one-time general fund expense in a future date too?
Generally, capital projects, I do think that that's a good use of fund balance, but something to the magnitude of that complex, I think that it may be more appropriate to consider serial bonds if we are going to invest in that large of a project.
Not that anything might ever come to fruition, late date, but it's something to plan.
Yeah, I know
Nonetheless,
that.
even though you can't plan for something that's not planned.
Yeah. My biggest caution would always be that we not use fund balance to fund recurring expenses, because at some point that fund balance isn't going to be there for that recurring expense. So if we can more gradually increase, the tax levy to cover those operating expenses as they increase, that would be, in my opinion, a more responsible approach.
And Dan, you bring up an example of a possible large capital project in the future. I would put another one on that list, and that is the jail update. Because there is a study going on as to what is necessary to bring the jail up to date and into code and current requirements, and that would be a large capital project as well.
Are there any numbers attached to that up here, or
I don't want to share with you any numbers that I've seen because I don't want to put you into panic mode.
Thank you.
You're very prudent.
So, I visited the jail, and I know it's built in the 30s, but when the new portion of the jail, built in the 2000s, was made so that it could go up. So I'm sure that they're looking at that.
Yes.
As a possibility, and sometimes it's easier to do that than to rebuild what was done in the 30s. But what a project, I know, and that's important to plan for those. And I will make a comment based on your last suggestion. Is yesterday, out of the amendments, it wasn't mentioned in this morning, but the budget was amended yesterday for some reoccurring expenses that were used in the general fund, used to offset the last couple of years. So we adjusted the budget yesterday in a negative way to cover some of those that we didn't deem as one time, in the tune of, what was the adjustments yesterday? 1.2 million. So just so the committee, that they're aware that we did help the general fund, but hurt the budget this year.
Yeah, right now, based on the amendments made yesterday, there's about 1.2 million in items that would be considered recurring expenses that we will need to figure out how to afford within the budget, considering we're at the tax cap right now.
Thanks a lot, Dan.
Sorry, I forgot to mention it in her, she didn't want to share that information and soil everybody's morning, but I figured at some point in time I could probably update.
If you do, after, looking through the projections any further, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Okay, if then you want to go on to some of the insurances. Tab 43 would be the self-insurance, which is the workers' comp plan, which you essentially already approved, but we will review that. Okay, as an overview, earlier this year, you adopted the workers' comp plan rates for all the municipalities, but this is just provides you all the detail behind that. There are no FTEs in this fund, in the MS fund, but the expenses associated with administrating this fund are covered under the insurance department and under finance. So that's an expense here and a revenue back to that to the general fund for the Dennis and Aki's time. So the first items here under MS 1710 and 1710-9999. In the summary, I've combined a couple just so it looks a little bit, makes a little bit more sense than the way the accounts are actually laid out in the detail. The contractual costs there under administration, again, are include the cost of administration as well as an allowance for stop loss coverage. So just you can see there in 2023's projection, we're trending under. The budget includes approximately $300,000 in lieu of purchasing stop loss insurance. So we had previously purchased stop loss. I think it was maybe in the 2023 budget. We kind of changed our model because we just weren't utilizing, and the cost of stop loss coverage was increasing. So what we've done in lieu of that is held on to $300,000 in the budget should we have a catastrophic claim, basically, that would have gone to a stop loss carrier. So we do see we're underrunning in 2023, but the 2024 budget again includes that $300,000 in lieu of purchasing stop loss. Under the revenue section there, those are the contributions back from the plan participants for the municipal plan, including the county's share. Under benefits and awards, that would be, all of our claims experience. So overall, we were able to reduce the plan by about $500,000 across all participants. We have been fortunate that our claims have continued to trend down, even with one of the cities exiting the plan. Any questions on the workers' comp? It's pretty straightforward, but if you have any follow-up questions, you know how to reach me. Okay, we can move on then to 98, which is liability insurance. So under the liability program, that includes a variety of different insurances that we purchase from, government officials insurance, cybersecurity, medical malpractice, automobile, general property, liability, et cetera. So all of those expenses for those premiums and deductibles and such, as well as the cost of administering our plan, are included in the CS fund. Then based on the particular insurance policy, we allocate the cost of that policy back to departments. So departments, all county departments will have an allocation of insurance expense. Some maybe that have more vehicles, they get a vehicle allocation, whereas a department that doesn't have any vehicles doesn't. So there's about half a dozen policies, and each one is allocated in a different way. Let's see. Overall, there was an approximately $126,000 increase for policies and premiums.
So, Kitty, what would you attribute the increase in the premium costs to?
We generally, we budget a 4% increase on all policies into 2024. I don't recall if there was any one that stood out as a larger increase than another, whereas, last year from 22 to 23, we saw a significant increase in our cybersecurity policy. We don't see another incremental increase in it, but we hope that we can keep that policy. I know a lot of counties can't even get cybersecurity insurance in general is getting harder and harder to purchase, just because.
Well, our insurance administration appropriations went up 7.6%.
Which item are you on?
I was looking at CS 1989.
The 136,000 for participant assessments, is that what you, or that's the revenue, sorry.
Looking at contractual.
Yeah, I can look back on the actual schedule of all of the insurances to see if there was a component of one that had more dramatic increase than the others.
What got my attention is when you said you budget 4%.
Well, so let me rephrase. So technically speaking, when I'm putting the model together, I put in what our actual premiums are today, because we usually get our bill at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what this year's amount actual is, and then I do a 4% on top of that. So some of them might have had more than a 4% increase from 22 to 23. So the 23 budget amount may have been different than what the actual was. So, but I have lots of detail behind these numbers that I can share.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, insurance always seems to be going up. It seems to be tied with that information technologies thing. It just keeps going up. Insurance just keeps going up. Then you always need more and more of it too.
Yeah.
Well, really what was on my mind when I asked the question was, before you mentioned 4%, is our claims experience negatively impacting our premiums?
I don't believe so. Dennis hasn't, as far as liability insurance policies go, I haven't heard him say to me that, they're going up because we've had some big claims, but I can loop back with him to see if there's any of them in particular, even, as of today.
It's like our insurance going up with the mobile bus for the medical, or like the mobile medical unit. I mean, I'm sure we're covering some insurance this year that we didn't have last year. It's gotta be an
Correct,
addition.
like, yeah, every year the list of equipment is different, so our, insurance on equipment is always based on what our, you know, any vehicles that, you know, have left the fleet or any new ones coming back on, so that's reviewed each year.
And it's just sad, a replacement of a piece of equipment that used to be 100,000, and it's now 200,000, so the insurance doubles. You know, it's just, that's the way it is.
Mhm. Just trying to see if I can. So I'll look into more of the detail and get back to you with any of standouts. The next insurance to review is the health insurance. I'm happy to proceed with that. You know, Debbie Makowski will be coming up for HR review. Generally speaking, I will put all of the figures together for this. Their department, as a reminder, they administer our health insurance plan. But I usually put all of the, do the rate development based on the information they provide or our broker provides on our renewals and various components of the health plan. So I'm happy to get started, or if you'd like Debbie to come up, I can see if she can come up a little sooner.
Sure.
Which?
Yes.
Might as well see if she can
Both.
come up early, if not.
Tell her, ask her if she could run rather than just walk.
Okay. So I will, I'll give a little intro. I did message her to see if she's available to come up a little early, but I will give my usual handout. There's a visual.
So,
And he does it better.
I'm sure you're right.
Driving in the car, and he's in there, and I'm just. You know, it's very good. Could you not do that?
Could you please?
Oh, did you?
This usually in color?
Yeah,
Same.
probably, but you
Same.
know,
It's okay, it's good.
I was gonna say.
We're cutting back on our expenses.
Save one color.
My crayons are out.
I can put up on the screen in color if you want.
No, I'll struggle through the black and white. Or gray and white. Or gray and black.
Oh, here we go.
Should we put in the budget for color printers next year?
There's only a few of them in the county. We do not have one in finance.
I have one in my house.
I always select black and white.
I do too, I do too.
So this is, so the M fund, which is, let's see, 96, so one back from liability. That's where we accumulate all of the costs associated with our health insurance plan. We are self-funded. We went self-funded in, I guess it was 2022. We were previously self-funded for our dental and vision, and then went to self-funding on pharmacy. Now eventually we've moved our medical plan to be self-funded as well. This chart is just an exhibit of how the components of our health plan that are charged to the M fund, and then kind of how they are charged back out to departments. So generally speaking, the M fund is going to have expense and revenue that balance each other because it's not a profit center. It's just we pay all of the bills out of the M fund, but the cost of our health plan is charged back out to departments. So the components include our medical plan, pharmacy rebates, dental, vision, county administration. So Debbie, a portion of Debbie's time and other staff in her department are charged back up to the M fund, and you'll see a revenue in their 1430 benefits account. So the cost of those FTEs in the HR department are offset by revenue from the M fund. So the bigger circle there, those are all of the health plan premium costs. So when we say, here's the cost of single, family of 2, or family of 3, those are the components that go into that cost. Then we also have another charge out to departments. It's called our health insurance surcharge. So the components of the surcharge are the employee share of retiree premiums. So retirees have a health insurance benefit. So that cost is shared across all county departments. Additionally, if a retiree elects to opt out of our plan, they get a cash value of that benefit, and it's paid out over time. That's part of the surcharge. And then we have, several items that are considered to be county-sponsored benefits, so they're not part of the premium for the health plan. An example is our EAP. We don't charge that. The cost of the EAP is not a cost of the health insurance premiums that are, if somebody elects a family of 2, EAP is a separate county benefit. But we still have a cost associated with it, and so that's wrapped up in the surcharge, and then the surcharge is allocated out as a separate line item in all the county department budgets. Where you'll see components of revenue in the M fund, so the active employee costs, you'll see those as the health insurance costs under each county department as an expense, so that's recorded as a revenue in the M fund. The surcharge, again, that's recorded as an expense in all county departments, and then it's a revenue recorded in the M fund. And then for retiree plans that had a cost share, the retiree share is recorded as a revenue in the M fund. So, those retirees that continue to pay a component of their health plan, that just comes in as a revenue under the M fund. So that's just kind of an overview of the accounting. It was a good idea, after all, to go self-funded right now. As you know, if you know about self-funding, for any type of health plan, there's going to be, you're going to have your high years, you're going to have your low years, or you're going to have your in-between years. But over time, the idea would be that, it would be more beneficial than paying a premium to a provider if we're not going to use all of what we would have that much in claims to offset the cost and premium. So fortunately, we have had some really good claims experience over the last 12 months, and overall our health plan increase is only 1.3% for next year, so that's a positive in this budget. Generally, in past years, we've been pretty successful in keeping it under 5% increase, but we had that kind of bad claims year, I think, in 2021, which kind of put us in a position to go self-funded, and we've had some good success the last 2 years. So doesn't mean we're not going to have a bad year at some point in the future. We need to expect those to come up now and then, but for right now, we're trending pretty well. So if you're just kind of moving along through the summary, the first one there is administration. So, I'm like, why isn't there any budget there? And I read my notes. So we moved administration. We had some changes in accounts for how we record things when we have to report to the state. So administration is now included under the 9089 account, which is part of the surcharge. And then 1930 is the contractual. There is just the cost of the premiums for our active employees. So you'll see as we go through, we've kind of segregated out costs for active employees and costs for retirees. And so active employee premiums increased about 652,000. The budget's also based on a point in time, number of enrollments and at a particular level of coverage. So that also comes into play in terms of our overall increase or decrease. So again, that premium includes dental, vision, medical, pharmacy, the credit then we get on our RX rebates. The next account, the 1932, so another thing helping us with our plan overall, our planned costs overall for next year. So in 2023, as I was developing the 2023 rates, it wasn't really on my radar that we would start to get, we do purchase stop loss insurance and there's a cost, so that cost is in here. What I didn't contemplate that we'd actually get reimbursements from the stop loss for the claims that go over the threshold. They reimburse us those expenses, so we pay those expenses at some point and then we get that reimbursement back. So I hadn't recorded that plan for that revenue, so as you can see, we received approximately $775,000 in 2022, and I projected a little less than that in 2024, but those will be reimbursements that we get back for stop loss
Is
claims.
there any way to track that and know that specifically?
It
You know,
just,
you're
it just,
guessing
it just depends. I mean, we always have catastrophic claims every year that are over a certain dollar amount that are, deemed, catastrophic claims, but
Maybe we'll see
it's
a trend
about,
over the
who,
years.
who ends up on an expensive medication, who, has, a heart attack, who has cancer. So you can't predict those. I'd say we just, that's why I'm not gonna,
No, I get it. Like, you need some time to probably, if you had 10 years, you could look at that and say.
We'd have this,
Better
again, like
baseline.
we only had one real year of history so far, in terms of the stop loss reimbursements, but, our broker and Vera, when we have an annual review, they kind of give us a list of the number of people who are currently projected to continue to have expenses over in that category in the future, but whether or not they go over the stop loss threshold's another aspect. And feel free to chime in if you want, Debbie, if I don't, if there's something I don't say. So going on to 9060-9999, these are the revenues that are charged back to departments. So I mentioned that we charge the departments. It's recorded as a revenue in the M fund. So these are the revenues back to the M fund for our active employees enrolled in our health plan. We also receive pharmacy rebates. So those are, help offset our plan costs. So they've remained healthy over the last couple of years. So that's good.
So Kitty, the prescription rebates were not included in this fund in the 2023 budget?
They were wrapped up under departmental income. So the 18.3 million in 2023 includes the net of pharmacy rebates.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so 9089, 8,000, these are mainly the retiree and surcharge items that I talked about earlier. So, the $4.1 million, so those are premiums the county pays for its retirees enrolled in our plan. and additional county-sponsored benefits, as an example, EAP, like I mentioned earlier. And then it also includes any cash payments for those retirees who have opted out and receive a cash payment. So we record FICA and Medicare on those payments. And the revenue is just the offset from the surcharge that's charged out to county departments. So again, overall for the health plan, net, $271,000 increase over all components of the health fund.
And we're gonna claim good management, not just good luck.
Thanks.
Good luck with that.
Well. I know, Debbie and her team, along with our broker, are always looking at, evaluating different programs that can help increase our rebates and things like that. So I know they actively are always working on those types of things.
Anything, any questions, comments?
One maybe, sorry. Under the revenue, do we make any revenue off of, our self-insurance fund through interest earnings?
Well, so our long-term portfolio, interest and earnings on our long-term portfolio are applied back to all county funds based
Sure.
on the cash balances every month. So, a portion of the interest and earnings is shared with the M fund, so that does account for a small portion of the revenue that comes into the M fund.
Just was curious what that, adjusted was since we've become an self-insurance fund. And do you expect that number to ever increase, or is that kind of volatile with the
I wouldn't
whole
say it
system?
makes any material impact on we're self-funded, we're still paying, we were paying premiums every month before, we're paying claims every month now. So it
Yeah.
doesn't make a dramatic change in our net cash balance month to month.
Okay.
We don't have a big chunk sitting there.
Well, yeah, yeah.
We're using it
It's in and out just as much.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
more in than out,
Hopefully.
hopefully.
Okay, you done with me?
Thanks,
You go
Kitty.
sit over
Let's.
there.
It's very sensitive. Yeah, in your summary, yeah, because they'll start out with the summary and then ask any line item questions if you have.
Perfect. Good morning.
Good morning. Just for the folks at home, tell us who you are.
Debbie Mikowski, Director of Human Resources.
Thank you.
Okay.
So like this is exactly
Would you have that one? Okay. What are you guys looking at first? The
We usually jump to the FTEs.
jump to FTEs. Okay. So,
But first, we have a question.
yes.
On the FTEs?
Yes. Do you have any open positions?
I do. I have 3.
3, and what are your expectations for filling them?
One was actually offered and accepted yesterday. The other is Ken's replacement. I think we're gonna have an internal move for that one, which would then cause another backfill, another opening. And then the third one is the compliance officer, which we are struggling to find quality candidates.
Qualified candidate.
Yes. That too. But yes, all three, actively recruiting. Yeah, just struggling with one title currently.
Understandable. Thank you.
Okay. One thing I wanted to point out, for the, where it says for the 2023 adopted FTE, apparently there was a glitch in a position that should have been added and is currently filled in HR. So 2023 adopted should have been 12.41. I think from what I understand, there was a individual who was out on leave for 6 to 8 months of 2022 into 2023. That position somehow got missed in the budget process. So while it looks like we're adding almost 2 FTEs, we're only adding 1, which is essentially the compliance officer position. Does that make sense?
Sure, just change the numbers to make you look better. We understand.
I get it. I didn't want to say it. That was easy fix.
And that,
It
and
works,
that is
right?
accurate. As you may recall, there was a gap for a little while where we didn't have Debbie came into the budget process last year, like at this time. So that was an oversight in last year's budget, for somebody who was on leave, didn't get loaded into the system.
And was the compliance officer switched from the county executive?
Correct. Yes. So overall, no budget impact with the compliance officer moving to HR. It was just a department move. Yes. Okay. So then I guess we're looking at the tentative budget review. Yeah, so the biggest, line item would be the, payroll, the personal services. So that would be the compliance officer position moving from the, county executive's office. Increase in the wages and steps for, CSEA 6,300. Out of our department of 11, we have 5 that fall under CSEA. So a smaller department, but we're seeing that impact. We did add the employee and labor relations position as a direct sort of swap for Ken's replacement title. And then, of course, factoring in, wages for the 2023 management salary plan into 2024. The next big line item I have is the contractual, the 37.3 thousand. Looking to add basically 25,000 to publicity promotion. I'm viewing this as recruitment, specifically to get us a paid subscription through Indeed, where we can start paying to keep our positions higher on the list when we put a opening out on sites like Indeed. We've had conversation around using LinkedIn, which isn't necessarily a cost tied to it, but the biggest, the 25,000 of that 37.3 would be tied to paid recruitment. What else do we have? So of that remaining 37.3, looking to, start up, basically, what we're, it's basically an AI chat service. We would like to start with that, service on the county intranet, basically helping employees, if they have some, basic questions, they can use that chat service, similar to what you see when you're shopping online. There's two ways that you can go with an AI chat service. You can either have it free, where it will learn some of the appropriate responses and then it'll grow. I think we're leaning more towards, a very restricted, here are some of the sample questions that, either insurance benefits or HR folks are receiving, and then provide that quick response in the form of AI chat. It would, eliminate a lot of the traffic, provide quicker response time for the employee's point of view, and then free up the folks within HR to sort of get into some of the higher level, requests for information or, situations that we need to manage.
Debbie, how would that AI chat service differ from just posting frequently asked questions and answers?
I think there's a reluctancy to read frequently asked questions. Where if you're on the county intranet and you can just type in your question and it pops up a response. I think for the end user, that's much faster than, now I have to find the frequently asked questions, I have to read to find my question, which, when you're talking anything from insurance benefits, leave administration, HR policies and procedures, those, I can just imagine how lengthy that fact sheet would end up getting.
I see that you include a cost for the benefits, under benefits, for the AI chat service of $1,500.
Yes.
So overall, what's the expense that you anticipate for the AI chat service?
And is it gonna make IT expenses go up?
Go down.
It's gonna keep raising poor John's duties. It's gonna be more next year. Another one.
Kitty, do you,
I'm gonna
Do you
look,
remem-
I'll look
I
that
know,
up
I'm
while we're
digging to
talking. I know
see.
they sent it to me previously, so I'll find it while you're.
because I know we very purposefully split it between HR and benefits. Knowing that it would be used by both areas within HR. But I don't remember what the
Yeah, I'm.
total cost is.
If you wanna move on, I'll look it up in the meantime, and then I'll can tell you.
Sure.
Just a second.
Okay. I should, okay. So I should probably touch on, departmental income. That shows a decrease, tentative by $5,000. So basically, this comes down to, civil service exam revenue is not where we were pre-COVID. We planned for, where is it? We planned in 2023 for a revenue of $17,000. We are trending closer to 12, 13. We estimate that 12, thousand for 2024 is a safe estimate based on the number of exams and the number of test takers that we're seeing. I think historically, what we were seeing pre-COVID and then the complete decrease in the middle of COVID, the assumption was, okay, 2023 will be out of the pandemic. We can go back to seeing what we were seeing in 2018, 2019, and that has not happened. So I don't want to continue, estimating 17,000, especially when you look at 2023 projected only at 10,000 right now.
I have a question on that.
Mhm.
The question was raised yesterday about the fee, that particular fee being a hindrance to some trying to take the civil service test. Do you feel that to be a hindrance at all that you hear?
We are hearing questions that the state level has waived their fees. That has not trickled down to the county level at this point. I know there are different ways to request a waiver of the exam fee. We do see that occur. But at the end of the day, the exam fee is roughly $15. I don't see that as a hindrance. In fact, we have, I don't want to say a high number of individuals, but there is a good number of individuals every time that there's an exam offered where they'll apply, they'll pay to take the exam, and then they don't show for the exam. So to answer your question, I don't see the exam fee as a hindrance. There's income-based and veteran status avenues to request to have the exam fee waived.
And you do see that happen?
Yes. Yes. And then the next, that is for health insurance. Did Kitty review this one, or was that did she review the M fund?
She did not review.
She
this.
did not, okay.
No.
Okay. Okay, so the big line item, for this one, so under contractual, $17.4 thousand. So this includes the 1,500 for the split in the AI chat services. There is an increase in postage, that was pretty substantial, simply because, under ACA regulations, now that we are, self-insured, there's more mailings that need to go out at the end of every year, which we saw that happen this year. We did not have it in the budget. We sort of split it between the two different accounts under postage. We were able to make it work. But to keep it correctly listed under benefits, we're showing an increase of $2,000 as of this year. So we budgeted $500 for postage under benefits for 2023. We're actually right now at $1,060. So again, estimating that roughly 2,000 would be appropriate for 2024 with all of the required mailings under ASA or ACA. The bigger item under contractual is, there's roughly $14,000 for a leave management system. This would be basically an additional module in our current HR and finance system that would allow us to electronically go through a leave management process, whether it's a leave of absence, whether it's FMLA, the disability type, even civil service disability type leaves. It would be a one-stop shop, not only for the employee, they're already in this system, they would have access to these forms, streamline the process. But on the insurance and benefits side, it would allow all of those requests to come in fully documented. It's not just a phone call. It's all confidential. And then all of the required follow-up documents would also be housed within this system, again, allowing for a more streamlined process. So this would potentially be a benefit for every county employee looking for any type of leave option.
Is that a one-time fee, or there's an ongoing fee of either?
This would be the one-time fee to, I guess, implement the new module and get us live within the system. Any other questions?
You have a question?
I do. Two of them.
I didn't know if that was a question or a statement.
I think it was a question about having a question.
Yep, I did too.
If I waived doing the online training, would it help save any money in your budget? Okay, so that's number one.
That's a great question, though. Nice
What
try.
was that question?
If I waived my online training, if it would save her any money in her budget, because I could waive that.
He's really hoping for a yes.
How
Did
can you
anyone else
waive?
get 4 or 5 emails yesterday?
Yeah.
So I could waive all of them.
4 or 5 is nothing.
That's required.
There's more coming.
Look forward to it every year.
Just make sure they're done, or you get an email from the year.
I like being on the naughty list. In the budget detail, there's the payroll contingency vacancy savings, and you have a savings of $35,900 that your department will be experiencing this year. Are you comfortable with that? And in that, the county budget, we are experiencing a total is over $3 million we're going to have in that throughout all the departments.
Under the vacancy savings?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you comfortable with those projections in your department and kind of in general?
As far as my department, yes, I'm comfortable with those savings. I think, between Ken's retirement, obviously there'll be a lower hit to our payroll account even with his replacement. It's a lower graded position that we went with to backfill him. In addition to some of the other moves, even the position that we just offered and subsequently filled yesterday, it's a lower step employee than what we originally had. So there is some savings there already aligned with the vacancy savings. Countywide, I don't know the history, and I'm kind of looking at, between Kitty and Jennifer. I don't know the history of the open positions that are not being recruited, and, you know, how long do they stay in the budget? Is it the entire year? Do they fall off? You know, I trust, you know, Kitty is saying that year over year, we've seen,
Yeah, I mean, what I've communicated, you know, to the committees is that we've seen an unusual, and I think we're just still recovering from COVID in terms of it's taking longer to recruit and fill positions. We still have, you know, I think we're more caught up on exams that were not given during COVID, but we have shorter lists of people when we do get those exams, a harder time attracting provisional appointments. And so the whole recruitment process in general is taking a lot longer than it has in the past for a variety of reasons, not anyone's fault, but it's just reality right now. And I think it's still gonna take us, in my view, from, you know, sitting where I sit, where I'm trying to, you know, hire people, I don't see that dramatically changing anytime soon. I think we're still gonna struggle with a lot of these things into 2024. You know, by 2025, if we get more to like a normal turnover savings, you know, more in the 3 to 5, you know, 3% range, that would be like what I would expect to be kind of normal. But, you know, I've shared with them that right now, this year, we're trending to be 10% behind our base pay budget for this year, and we experienced the same last year, so.
yeah, I don't think the pandemic helped anyone. I don't think any of us have seen a labor market like this ever. I don't know when and if we'll see it change, or if we just need to make more adjustments to sort of, I guess, get up to speed. You know, we're not seeing the number of candidates, we're not seeing the eagerness to find work, to accept work. I've never seen anything like it. So I mean, I think we're being creative in finding solutions. You know, it's just which one is gonna, you know, see results. I can't say.
Dan, your question was specifically about the HR department. And just for perspective, the salary savings from open positions for this department is 2/3 of an FTE. And they currently have 3 open positions, and with the one they just filled, they have 2 open positions. So from that perspective, I think that the salary savings that are in this budget are reasonable.
Yeah, agreed, and I wanted to portray that into the
bigger picture.
bigger pictures, and especially with you as the lead of the human resources and as far as recruitment too, and what the grimmer positive outlook would be.
Right.
And, you know, unfortunately, you know, it would be nice if you were in a position where you needed that 35,000 and you had someone in the seat. And that's the reality, even with the whole thing, is we'd rather have the people in the seat, and that's why we budgeted for them.
Right.
So it's kind of sad, and then we've left it in the budget up to this year. So now it's a pretty good, significant amount that we are removing from the budget in recognition that we can't hire the people. So I
Right.
just wanted to have your input a little bit. Specifically, you have a department, but also I wanted to expand it to the whole
Right,
county.
right, yeah, countywide. It's,
Yeah.
you know, applying the same, I guess, feelings and reality of what we're seeing out there.
Yeah.
What do you think the root cause of that is? There's gotta be some, I mean, being in HR, you must have something to handle on, maybe why people are not interested or don't wanna work.
Well, before you answer that, I would say like another thing that we haven't really touched on is that we still we had kind of leveled off in terms of retirements we are seeing, but we have had a lot more retirements even over the last year or so, and I don't know what you would say in terms of if that's kind of leveling out again, or we're still seeing, I mean, I know what I see with the number of people who come off, you know, terminate every pay period, but,
Yeah, there's,
that's-
since since the language with CSEA 6300's tentative agreement was released, I have noticed a decrease in retirements. I think that is directly related to the increased calculation starting in 2026. I think someone who was close to retirement is making the decision to put that off so that they can see that added calculation.
But just some of the openings that I've had in my department have been related to retirements, and more so than usual. I know I'm a smaller department, but I know a lot of other departments have been seeing retirements of, just.
It's kind of fun going back. I can go back farther than most everybody sitting over here. We were incentivizing retirement, remember?
Yeah, back in like 2012 or something like that.
Get out. Now we're saying.
Now we're saying no,
Stay.
stay. Yep.
A little while longer anyways.
Yep.
It is fun to watch those trends, it really is,
And it's hard to say come back after they've been gone for 8 years.
AI is gonna solve all this for us.
They are all our part-timers, sadly enough, A lot of those full-time employees retire and come back as a part-time carts driver or.
Right.
Court security guard, or whatever.
I'm gonna
it may
come
be.
back as a legislator consultant.
You can have a seat in the back.
Is that a current title?
Couldn't keep it though.
At $11 an hour.
Kevin's giving you a thumbs up on that one, yeah.
I sense Kevin, I don't even have to look over there, I feel.
Feel the love.
All right, anything else for Deb? Good?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us on our schedule to lunch. So we'll now break for lunch.
Oh, if you just,
That's the chair.
these I think were the figures that people,